Not gonna lie, this first episode got me real shook. Let me explain. Welcome to the review of episode 1 of Watchmen, the HBO series. And there will be possibly some light spoilers. I'm gonna get too far into the detail here, but I just have a lot of thoughts about this premiere. First of all, I have to say that I am from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which this TV series takes place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They go through a lot of the history in Tulsa and just kind of things that happened. They hit you right off with the Tulsa Race Riot of 1921. And if you don't know what that is, it is one of the most horrendous atrocities that's ever happened in American history. Not in any other time in American history since the Civil War have more Americans killed other Americans. And to say this was a riot is really an understatement. This was a massacre. White people killed and murdered and looted black people, which they start off in really the thick of the race riot. And I feel like they're really purposeful there because to give you a little history on the Tulsa Race Riot 1921, first of all, you need to know that there was a lot of racial tension and resentment in Tulsa in 1921. It was right after World War I. Many soldiers were coming back. White soldiers were coming back to not that many opportunities, but black soldiers were coming back to opportunities because Tulsa was just a beacon of black excellence and really the whole entire nation. So much so that the Greenwood community was called Black Wall Street. It was dubbed that by Booker T. Washington. I mean, it was black owned businesses. They had their own airports, their own schools, their own just everything, their own movie theater, which is interesting enough. They actually show a movie theater starting off in this series. And they showed just how gruesome it was. Although honestly, I think they were fairly tame, which is really sad to say. And as a Tulsa native, as a person who has known about the race riot for a very long time, this was really weird to me. The first time I learned of the Tulsa Race Riot, I was in 8th grade and I went to a play called the Tulsa Riot. I really had no idea what it was going to entail. They just took a few students to this play and boy, my perspective on a lot of things changed after that. It left me speechless. So here's history on it. Like I said before, a lot of racial tension was building in Tulsa. There was this young black man named Dick Rowland. He went to the Drexler building in Tulsa, which was like a hotel, I think. He was getting onto the elevator. It was really old time, so the elevators were fairly uneven. So he tripped, trying to catch himself. He grabbed onto a young white woman who was in the elevator. She screams, and they take it from there. They assume that he tried to assault her and rape her, and he was quickly sent to jail, and there were quickly mobs that formed at the jailhouse. There was a white mob that wanted to lynch him. In fact, the newspapers read "Nab Negro" for assaulting a white woman, something along those lines, which that is paid off in here in this episode. They show that newspaper saying about lynching a Negro. There are white mobs and there are black mobs, and if I remember, they both kind of brought their ammunition with them and their guns. But the black mob was told to go back home. They could not have their guns, so they went back home, they returned, and then there was a scuffle. Someone tried to disarm someone else. It might have been a black person who still had his gun on him, not entirely sure, but a gunshot rang out, and from that point on, white people were killing black people all throughout the streets of Tulsa. And it is sad, and I say it's weird for me because I've always kind of wanted a television show or a movie to really highlight Tulsa Race Riot in 1921 because I want people to become aware of it. But watching this, I realized I didn't really want that. I didn't know it was going to affect me that way because when I see this show, when I saw this episode, I saw my people, right? I just didn't see black people. I saw like my people. And my family goes back to Tulsa all the way to this time. In fact, they lived in that neighborhood. They escaped, those riots. They're around there. And, there's stories about how my grandfather was like a baby. And so when I see this, I imagine, my people there, like I have a direct line to this. Well, they started murdering everyone in North Tulsa. They started just pillaging and burning things on fire. And not only that, but they dropped bombs from airplanes onto North Tulsa, like airplanes. This was not just some scuffle. This was an all-out massacre, all out trying to exterminate black people from North Tulsa. After that, they would round up black people and put them in detention centers. It was just a really horrendous event in American history that has gone unknown until now, and I'm grateful for that. In the aftermath, they were left with 35 city blocks being burned to the ground, thousands of people injured, and 100 to 300 people were killed. And that number is very ambiguous because they buried the body so quickly that there is no real count of how many people were killed. There is going on right now, just put into effect, a commission being done to actually start digging up bodies to really get a better count of how many people actually were killed. Since then, there have been no reparations, no apology for it. Tulsa has just tried to rebuild on itself. And I will say Tulsa is a really great place for black people. I no longer live there. Life just happens and you go where certain things take you. But Tulsa has a great black community, especially in North Tulsa, and still in that Greenwood district. If you don't know, Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, it was that little district there. And Greenwood, Archer, and Pine stands for the Gap Band. Charlie Wilson, he's from Tulsa. That's what those stand for. But why Tulsa? Why highlight the Tulsa Race Riot of 1921? I think it has a lot to do with what Ozymandias says in the next preview, that the thing more powerful than an atomic bomb is fear. And I think fear was a big factor in what happened in Tulsa in 1921. Like I said before, white men came back from war and they didn't have really, as much things to do. They didn't have many opportunities. And black men came and they had more opportunities because Tulsa was a thriving place for black people. The white men feared that he'll be irrelevant. He feared that black people were going to overtake them. And it's a terrible fear. It's an unfounded fear, but it's fear nonetheless. Fear oftentimes is not rational. And what I found interesting here is that there does seem like there was reparations paid. It seemed like black people get some type of tax incentive where they don't have to pay taxes, and you know what, that might not be so bad, and clearly people resent black people and they fear them, especially the white man in this situation, the new Warshak gang. And I kind of find weird that people are like, oh, why would people idolize him and become a white supremacist group? Like, Warshak wasn't a great person. Like, he was clearly homophobic, he might have been racist, he definitely he just wasn't a good person. It isn't absurd to think that a white supremacist wouldn't take the ideal of Warshak and not make it a white supremacist group. I mean, the KKKs is a group of Christians. It's not absurd to think that these people can't take what Warshak says, which is not that great of ideas, and turn it into a white supremacist group. Also interesting because in Watchmen, they had, that fear up between the Soviets and the United States. Here, it seems like it's clearly going to be a black and white thing. And Tulsa is really interesting in that case. Being from Tulsa, I can tell you that Tulsa is really segregated. Like, I can draw lines and, on a map tell you where it starts. Where Archer stops, all the way to North 66th Street, that's North Tulsa. That's where a lot of the black people are concentrated at. And then you got a little area here sandwiched in there between like Archer and 10th Street South. That is, where a lot of Hispanic people are at, the Hispanic community. And then after that, that's South Tulsa. That's where, quote unquote, a lot of white people live there. That's where all the infrastructure is at. That's where all the businesses, the malls, the movie theaters, that's where all that stuff is at. Here you can clearly see that that's not the case. Like, it's really interesting, sort of a change in history of just what would happen if black people actually paid reparations. Like, there would be more of them on police force. It would be, more of them being in the theater. I will say that this show doesn't feel like Watchmen, and it should not feel like Watchmen, because in Watchmen, it was in like 1985, and this takes place in 2019, like 34 plus years has passed. The 1980s don't feel anything like current day and age. I don't know what's going on with Ozymandias yet, but he's really interesting. I feel like the show is going to turn more into Watchmen the more he's involved. I find those people that works for him kind of weird. Like, I don't think those are real people. Like, those are either like some robots or some clones that you can easily manipulate, but they just don't seem all there. Like, especially when he's talking about like making that cake for him, and they say, well, we used your honeycomb that you gave us. Did they actually like grab a honeycomb and just decorate it? Because like when he bit into it, he seemed to be like, this is crap, take this away from me. but it seemed like they're like learning or something. I don't know, they just seem weird. I can't end this episode without talking about Regina King. She's an absolute great actress. I've always loved her, from Ray to the Boondocks. She just always delivers, and I can't wait to see her character. I love her design. She's just gonna kick so much butt, and I think she's gonna be challenged a lot. It is really interesting for me, being from Tulsa, like just hearing the word Tulsa so many times. Like, my city has never been highlighted like this before, put into the spotlight, and that is one of the things I get enjoyment out of it. Also, I get a weird enjoyment out of it that I often think to myself, like, all right, what would happen if Black Wall Street was still here today? Even if it was destroyed, what would happen if we actually got reparations? Just where would we be in society if the United States upheld the ideas that it put forth on paper, in 1776? I'm looking forward to even more flashbacks to Tulsa in 1921, before the race riot, to really show just how prosperous that community was for Black people, to just really juxtapose that with how they currently are in Watchmen, and how the white man fears of being left behind. I think the show offers a lot of commentary on, like, sure, the United States, we can handle really any threats from the outside. That's easy, but we still haven't managed to take care of the issues we have internally. We still haven't really atoned for our sins, from slavery to Jim Crow to just all the atrocities that have been done. I say we, I don't mean we, definitely not me. But all in all, this was a really great first episode to a season, to a series. I think it's going to be really enthralling. It's going to continue to just make me think. It's going to be really insightful. I'm really excited for it. I won't be reviewing each episode unless an episode comes along that just really speaks to me, but I will review the entire series once it's wrapped up. Also, you can check out more DC related content. You check out my Game of Thrones reviews on the channel. So thank you. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, please like, comment, share, and consider subscribing. And sincerely, thank you for watching. I'm out.